Robin here, and back once again with a deck review for you. This week I'm going to play in the Gitz, and I do know that I'm going to be playing against the Gitz. Yes, we're going to have a mirror match, but I have tried to not take that into account. Whether I would have had the idea had I not known that, I don't know. The idea of this deck is that it's a scurry deck. Yes, I'm going to be trying to move as much as possible. I've been thinking about this game quite a lot, and those of you who have watched last week's game, which was the Nightvault versus the Beams, and I've noticed that Pete had some quite atrocious luck with his dice rolls, and I thought, well, that's obviously one of the areas you can't control. But maybe if you built a deck that had less dice rolls in it, maybe you have more control. And the Gitz seem quite well geared up to do that. They have lots of cards which kind of score what you might call passive glory, lots of movement-based cards, and they don't require heavy hitting, so they've got things, they score things like extreme flank and stuff like that quite easily. So I thought, well, let's see if we can do it. Let's see if I can make a scurry deck. I think it would confound your opponent. Whether it would confound your opponent for two games in a row if you're playing in a tournament, I'm not so sure. So I think a little bit unfair. I don't think Pete will be expecting this necessarily, and maybe we need to go to a best of 3 or something like that on this game. But we'll see. So this is my scurry deck, is how I'm calling it. I'm quite pleased with it. Let's hope it goes quite well. Okay, for my objectives, objective number 1, quite controversially, is cover ground. Cover ground, now this is not an obvious choice for the Gitz, but when they're inspired they have 4 movement, and there are a few cards like Spectral Wings or maybe Tantalising Prize, which can take them up to 6 movement, and then you can score cover ground. I haven't gone for sprint, which is another obvious one because you can double the 4 to 8, because sprint is just a movement, and I wonder whether that will actually be useful. I'm not sure, so I haven't gone for sprint, but I have, you'll see later, got the other 2 cards I mentioned in there. And then I've got my favourite card, Escalation, which is a restricted card, and then our only way out for that supremacy type style glory collecting. Superior Tactician, I've loaded in Superior Tactician here, which means I've gone for more score immediately cards, which is why cover ground is in here. Part of the problem with this sort of scurry deck formation, if you like, is that some of the score immediately cards aren't very geared up for it. They're geared up to fighting. I'm trying to avoid fighting, so I haven't gone for things like No Remorse and Precise Use of Force and stuff like that. So I've gone for score immediately like cover ground, so that maybe I can score Superior Tactician. Well Guarded seems like a reasonably obvious choice for the Gitz and this type of band. I'm obviously going to be trying to keep them close together so I can scurry all the time, and then hopefully they'll be next to Zarbag to do that. And because I'm going to be trying to keep them close together to scurry, I've put in Mad Scurry, which I think in a fighting type deck is hard to score because you need to move 5 of your goblins. But with this movement deck, I'm hoping it will be a bit easier. We'll see. Obliterated. I think Obliterated 2 score immediately glory has got to be in there, really. You may not score it against higher wound count warbands, but I think you against the lower ones, you've got a very good chance of scoring this. You're going to inspire Snurk early, and hopefully you can score that. And it gives your opponent something else to worry about while you're hopefully running rings around them. Extreme Flank, again, a bit of a shoe-in, I think, for the Gitz warband. I think you've got to have Extreme Flank if you're playing them. You practically start whatever happens, you practically start with them on the flanks, so you can score that. Ganging Up. Now, this is another score immediately card that's worth 2. It's not an easy card to score, but if anybody can do it, it's the Gitz with their multiple movements and they're just sheer numbers. So, Ganging Up. Obviously, I will be trying to get some blocked hexes on the table to try and score Ganging Up. Note, it is only blocked hexes, not lethal hexes, when trying to score Ganging Up. Keep Them Guessing is a good card for the Gitz. They've got a couple of options for card actions, and then obviously move actions come fairly easily to them. So hopefully Keep Them Guessing will be a good one for me to score. Martyred, again, particularly useful in a non-combat deck. Martyred, you've got a very good chance of scoring Martyred because you're not necessarily be fighting, but you're inevitably going to find somewhere you end up butting up against the opponent. So I think Martyred is a good card for this deck. And finally, Supremacy, because Supremacy, again, that's kind of like that early glory. Hopefully their only way out is get on those 3 objectives and score that 3 glory. Gambits, I've gone for Distraction because you always find you might want to move somebody off of an objective to get on an objective, or you might want to move somebody up to Snurk to squish them. So that's why Distraction's in there. Earthquake, again, I think is useful doing movement. Just this will move everybody, possibly. And you've got enough bodies that maybe you can end up not on an objective with enough people, but you might be able to shift them onto it. So I think Earthquake's a good card for this deck. Ready for action. I think there's almost auto-include. I've got this as another restricted card along with Earthquake. I did actually and ah as to whether to have Ready for Action or a Destiny to Meet, for that extra glory at the end, because again those cards, Slumbering Key and a Destiny to Meet, are good for the goblins because you've got so many, it's quite hard to kill them all. But Ready for Action won it in the end purely because it gets that extra movement, and this is about moving, so it may be that I end up moving one person into position and then using Ready for Action to move lots of goblins all at once. So that's why Ready for Action is in there. Shardfall. When was the last time you saw Shardfall in a deck? Shardfall is in here to help me score ganging up and maybe just to block the board down if I need to. I'm hoping maybe I'll win the roll off. Maybe I can really narrow Pete's approach, and so maybe Shardfall could be useful for that. If we'll see. Spectral Wings for that speed for cover ground, I think, and again it could be useful for catching him unawares on the objectives. Tantalising Prize for much the same reason. Quick Advance, again, for pushing those goblins together so before moving off en masse. Sneaky Step for much the same reason. That's the goblin equivalent of Sidestep. We didn't have room for Sidestep in the deck in the end. Centre of Attention, brilliant for scoring Obliterated, and good for, again, putting everybody close together and scoring that Mad Scurry. Confusion, useful for objective hunting. And Irresistible Prize, again, it kind of concentrates people together, so I think that could be useful, and again it's useful for getting on objectives, so that's why Irresistible Prize is in there. My upgrades: Acrobatic, brilliant for the goblins. Deathly Fortitude, great for Snurk. Seize the Day. I'm not sure about this one. This was the last card I put in the deck. I would have had a Destiny to Meet if I could, but I couldn't because of the restricted situation. So Seize the Day. After this fighter makes a move action, not as part of a charge action, discard this card, and they do not gain a move token and not considered to have moved. So again, it's all about boosting those movement possibilities. Endless Whirl, I think this is good for Snurk if he does get surrounded with Centre of Attention or something. He'll do 1 damage to everybody, can be useful. Champion's Fortitude, again for Drizgit, because I might have to do some battling. So Drizgit might appreciate having this on him if he's doing some fighting. As Drizgit and the Squigs are going to be doing any heavy lifting on the fighting side, and that is what's quite nice about the goblins. They can still do a fair amount of damage even when they're uninspired, and so that could be helpful to distract my opponent away from what I'm really trying to do. The Faneway Crystal is good for any Supremacy style deck, and I've gone for Great Fortitude to try and boost those wounds on somebody. Great Speed, it might be useful to get somebody where I need to go. I wasn't sure about Great Speed. Again, it was one of the last cards I added. Great Strength, useful for Drizgit or perhaps a Bouncing Squig. Slumbering Key for that 1 glory in the end game, and Sudden Growth just to maximise the chance of getting extra 2 wounds on Snurk. Yep, so that's my deck. I quite like it. I think we'll have to wait and see whether it's any good. I think it's definitely got possibilities. It's got a whopping 23 glory in it, which I think is quite a lot. The goblins do seem to be good at packing in that glory. I think it's a slightly confounded deck. It's something different to see how this game plays. A different way to where I usually play. I've been finding I've been not stuck in a rut, but playing things in a very similar way of passive glory, powering up and then trying to kill people, which I think is a valid and good way to play the game. I want to try something a little different, so I've gone for this Scurry deck. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think of my upgrades. I'm not sure they're the best ones I could have chosen, but I just kind of got myself in a bit of a knot, so they're the ones I went for in the end. So let me know what you think of those. And until next time, I hope you enjoy the game when it comes up, and I'll see you soon. Bye!